Welcome to the Follow the Leaders podcast, where we get a glimpse into the minds and lives of exceptional leaders and hear about their experiences, insights, and strategies for success. On today's episode, we'll hear from one heart-centered, effective leader and hear about their wisdom and perspective. So get ready to follow along. Welcome back to the show. I have such an awesome guest with me today for this conversation. As leaders, we are rock stars in many ways, but we are also real humans as well. And today I'm joined by someone whose work revolves around navigating this all so well. Today I'm joined by Amanda Vargas. Amanda is a serial entrepreneur best known for her work in the health and wellness space. Her 2016 TEDx talk chronicles her journey with overcoming multiple sclerosis through diet and lifestyle changes. In 2017, Amanda developed and operated a 100% gluten and dairy-free restaurant in New Jersey, successfully exiting the brand in 2023. Now, Amanda is in the midst of developing software that will change the game for functional medicine and holistic practitioners so they can drastically improve patient outcomes. Amanda also runs a free community for entrepreneurs with chronic health conditions to help them master their health and avoid burnout so they can continue to do what they love. Amanda, congratulations on all of your success and your impact, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me.
Okay, there are so many topics that I am excited to talk to you about, but let's start with your current work. Can you fill listeners in on what that looks like?
Sure. So after exiting the restaurant, I took a lot of time to figure out what I wanted to do next. And for fun, I'm doing a local podcast as part of a small marketing company. But the big thing I'm working on is creating a software that will help increase patient outcomes for those who go to functional medicine doctors. So for those who don't know what functional medicine is, that is the more holistic way of treating any sort of condition and getting to the root cause of it. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, all those doctors tend to be out of pocket and are not covered by insurance. So when people spend a lot of money, they expect, obviously, a great outcome. And although these doctors do provide amazing health care, and I mean, like, if you go to a regular doctor, 3 tubes of blood, these guys do 25 to 30 tubes of blood. Like, there is great health care to be had. But there's something that makes healing better and more personal for people. And that's when they can be a part of their own healing journey. And so by educating them on just basic functional medicine practices, diet, nutrition, mindset, through the doctors, they will definitely see better outcomes. So we essentially put programs within doctors' own practices in order to help educate their patients better on what they're doing to help them get better.
So it's like the software is like the bridge between the doctors and the patients, as far as like kind of like a my chart would be for a traditional doctor's office. Is that the idea?
Right. Yeah. So they could always see their own blood work, and software exists for that. But this is more of like educational based software and support, like a community support. So we'll just, for example, we use myself, right, having Lyme disease. Sometimes I have a lot of questions for my doctor, but I can't always get in touch with her. If it's a weekend, if it's late at night, these portals will house resources for patients that are kind of struggling to really take control of their health and help them get there faster and really, again, understand why the doctor is doing what they're doing, because the doctor is really smart and knows what they're doing. But if you don't fully understand it as a patient, it actually becomes harder to heal.
That's really cool, especially since it's different than like an online group. It's like you're going through the doctor's offices. And so it's really a resource for both the doctor and the patient.
Exactly. Yep. Solving a lot of problems for a lot of people, hopefully. Yep.
Yeah. So how did you step into this work? Like, what was your path to focusing on this year?
Yeah, so it's been a really long road for me. I actually lost the majority of my vision when I was a kid. I had something called uveitis, and the way that was treated in the early 90s was with a lot of steroids. Steroids ended up giving me glaucoma by the time I was 8 years old. So I had a bunch of surgeries. I lost most of my vision, and I'm pretty much blind in my right eye, and I can see like 20/25 in my left eye, but it's like tunnel vision. So it's a very small, limited amount. I'm very lucky to be able to use the vision that I have left the way that I'm able to use. And that's because that you have such a change in your body before the age of 8. My brain essentially just adapted to be able to use the vision I had left as well as it could. So this is what fortunately makes me as capable as I can be. So that was kind of the start of it. And then when I was 21, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I was unable to walk. I woke up one day, I had issues walking, I had pain, numbness, all sorts of things. And the journey to getting diagnosed and being believed was pretty difficult. And I did what most people would do in that situation. I kind of just listened to the doctors and was really fearful because I was 21 and I was like, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? Like by the time I'm 30, I'm going to be blind and in a wheelchair. Like this was my mindset at the time because I didn't know how long my eyes would hold out with glaucoma. And now here was this super unpredictable neurological disease that could also affect your vision, but it really affects everything in your body. So I definitely went through a bit of a funk for a short period of time. And then a couple years later, I have learned about diet change, the paleo diet. I always give credit to Dr. Terry Walls. She's amazing. She was is a doctor with MS, and she went and retaught herself cell biology, and she went from a wheelchair to riding a bike for 18 miles in 9 months in her TED Talk. So I was like, well, if she could do it, I could do it. And what she did was give me so much hope and just open my eyes to the possibility that I had more control over my situation than I had initially thought. And unfortunately, that's something that doctors don't really tell you. They're always afraid to give you false hope. So I found that I changed the way I lived. I cut out gluten, dairy, soy, processed foods for a really long time. I was sleeping great. It was like 5 hours a night. I feel like a champ. I cut back on alcohol, did everything I could. And this was like 2011. So then after just a bunch of years of doing that and starting to meet other people kind of in the same space, I decided to open up my own restaurant because there was nowhere for me to eat.
Like a true entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. I'll go build it.
Exactly. So yeah, it was tired of just getting like a burger, no buns, sub veggies for fries everywhere. So I created a place called Fettle and Fair in Westfield, New Jersey. And we started really small, hole in the wall. I had no money when I started. That story is pretty crazy. I just really plugged away at it as best as I could. I made something called bone broth, which was really popular in the health and wellness community. And did that for 6 years, ups and downs through the pandemic. I opened a second store, closed a second store. Getting through the pandemic was one of the most wild experiences I could have ever had as an entrepreneur. But I did it, and it taught me a lot. And I was definitely a little naive when I first started, even though I always loved business. But when you're in the trenches, it really obviously teaches you those lessons. So did that, sold it almost a year ago, which was also an amazing experience, selling your baby to somebody and be passing over the reins and feeling like you win so big. So that was great. Unfortunately, though, towards the end of that, I really started to actually get really unwell again. And I had been diagnosed with Lyme disease in July of 2022. So like MS, Lyme disease, if you don't know too much about it, can be a real ass kicking, if I could say that. So most people think it's just like, oh, you take some antibiotics and you're fine. And if you have it for a long time, it can be like super detrimental. Also can have a lot of neurological issues. So like my thyroid blew out, I ended up getting Hashimoto's. And it's not just Lyme, it's Epstein-Barr and other co-infections like Bartonella and Babesia. So a lot of people have no idea how crazy this can get. So I was on the more crazy side of it. I'm feeling pretty good these days. It takes a while to find a good doctor, but all that said and done is kind of what has pulled me full circle to be like, you know what, I can start any business now being an entrepreneur. I can be successful at 10 different things if I wanted to. It's like, what's the thing I'm going to pick that's going to be my work for like the next 5 years? That I could really make a big impact, because I could have done coaching. I could have one-to-one stuff, could have done group stuff. And there's so many people doing it, and like heads up, like good for them. Like we need more people doing it. But I felt like I could do something better. I could bridge the gap for the doctors, improve their patient outcomes. And because once you get to a certain level, like a health coach isn't good enough. Like you need an MD who's a functional medicine practitioner as well. So that's where I came to wanting to help them.
So I want to go down a little rabbit hole here for a second. You went from running a restaurant, which is just such a unique type of work, and now you've created the software company. What as the leader, as the entrepreneur behind these things, like what are the similarities that you see between the two? Like where in this is just business, like it's just the same, and where have you had to completely learn new skills as a leader and an entrepreneur?
I mean, tech, fortunately for our generation, I mean, I'm 37, you can learn anything online. So where it's the same as like just learning how to do something, like watching YouTube videos and trying to meet the right people and doing meetups and joining other people's webinars. Like it's just work. It's just, teaching yourself and learning. That's definitely where it's the same. I didn't know how to run a restaurant. I worked in restaurants, but owning is a completely different ballgame. Managing people, obviously, was the biggest thing I had to learn how to do. And there's always similarities. And as far as doing something when it comes to health and wellness, I mean, for me, it was a health food restaurant, right? So when people came in every single day, I was always like, why are you here? Because nobody eats gluten-free food because they want to. It's usually because they have to. So I tell people over 6 years, I've had 40,000 interactions with people. And in those interactions, it was always like very deep personal stuff. Like I learned the psychology of people. I started to understand why people do what they do. And that's really, for me, the core of any business, right? Solving a problem and helping people. And the better you understand them, the better you can help them.
And like you said, the willingness to get online, YouTube, learn like that is
no excuses.
Yeah, right. It's like it is out there. You just have to be willing to sort of start from scratch and do that. I, like you, I also start a lot of businesses. And so it's the same. It's like the structure, the ideas behind how you start and operate something are the same, but then you need to like be willing to go so far down the rabbit hole and learn what is involved in that specific thing. So that totally makes sense. So you have so much expertise in how to keep yourself healthy and get back healthy as an entrepreneur and a leader. And I would love if you could share your best advice for keeping yourself healthy when you're also dedicating yourself to your work so much.
Right. So you hear a lot of people talk about diet and nutrition. And when I did my TED Talk, it was about diet and nutrition. And looking back now, that's like step one and also the easiest thing of 10, right? So it's the thing that people tend to complain about the most. They're like, oh, like I can't give up cheese or I can't give up bread or any of these things. I'm like, if you go down the rabbit hole of what it really takes to be fully healthy, I'm like, that's the easiest part.
Yeah.
For what I've come to learn over the last 10, 12 years is stress management, 1000%. If your nervous system is out of whack, everything else will be out of whack. It is the root cause. Everything else is a symptom and a Band-Aid. So you can have all these gut issues. You're not digesting food. Your tummy hurts. Maybe you're getting some food sensitivities. And what we tend to do is like, okay, start with the GI doctor, and they don't find anything because they never do because it's stress related. So, or they give you PPIs, right? And then that ends up hurting your gut more. So then you go to a functional doctor. And, you know, they're like, okay, let's test your gut. We'll poop in a box. We'll do a GI map. And we're going to test you for SIBO. We're going to do all these things. And all the numbers, all the tests will come out wacky because there is obviously something wrong. But sometimes it is bacteria overgrowth. Sometimes it is something, you know, an imbalance of some sort. But for the most part, those things happen because of stress. And the thing about stress is it's such a slow, gradual decline that we never see it coming until one day you wake up and your body just gives out. And then people are like, I don't know what happened to me. And it's like, well, you've been in fight or flight for the last 7 years running your business and taking care of your family and the ups and the downs. And, you know, my wife always tells me, like, it'll be a really crazy couple weeks. And I'm like, mentally, I'm like, I don't understand why I don't feel well. Like, I have this under control. And she's like, this is a lot. It's a lot to handle. And we don't tend to give ourselves credit, men or women too. I think we both are really, really bad at this, where women are probably a little bit, unfortunately, more hurt by it because we're still like such emotional beings, and sometimes we take things more to heart, or we feel the weight of more stuff like the family and everything else kind of weighing on us. But if you're unable to manage stress and it goes unchecked for a really long time, your body will start to physically break down.
It is really true. And I think that the fact that you're focusing this message on entrepreneurs and leaders, it's like, yeah, we can withstand very hot water. We can work through and be very successful under a lot of stress with a lot of pressure. And yeah, add in the family life and the home things that women do tend to step up more for in general. Obviously,
Right.
It's not everybody, but in general.
Yeah, mostly, right? Let's be honest, right? Like,
yeah, right. Exactly. And so I think that is really the question. Sometimes you hear people tap out because they have, quote, boundaries, right? But then you talk to an entrepreneur, and my work focuses on moms that own businesses. And so now you're adding an additional level of the juggling act. But we would say, like, we don't mind. We like it. We like the stress, you know. I run a professional development group for, like I said, moms that own businesses. And we just had our in-person network meetings. We meet every other month. And our topic was goal setting, but we were really talking about how it's really about goal selection. And like, we can have too many goals, right? And so I'm just really curious, like, why is it so important for somebody who feels like they're thriving? I know you said the body gives out, but like, one, how do you even identify that the water's getting hotter? And two, how do you force yourself to press pause on some of the things or lower the stress when you do thrive under the pressure?
Right. The problem is a lot of the signs and symptoms are what we consider normal for aging for a lot of people. So we really tend to ignore them, or it's genetic and my mom or my dad had it, so of course I'm going to get it. And that's not always the case. Really early signs tend to be fatigue, headaches, brain fog, change in diet. Maybe you're not as hungry as you used to be. So that happens because when you have a lot of cortisol surging through your system, it actually suppresses your appetite. So the entrepreneur who's waking up in the morning, not hungry, drinking a cup of coffee, maybe eating a sugary treat just to get something in their stomach, they're actually tanking all of their hormones. And then by the afternoon, they feel terrible. What that turns into eventually is blood sugar dysregulation. So maybe you start to get dizzy sometimes, or for women, changes in your menstrual cycle. You're like, oh, that's early, or oh, wow, why is it so late? Maybe it's more pain during your menstrual cycle. Changes in your thyroid function. So again, like more fatigue, or maybe start to feel cold or hot. Just things that are not normal for you. Anything that's not normal for you is usually a good sign. And this is where it differs for everybody, and where it's really important for you to learn your body and to understand it, regardless of whether or not your blood work is normal. Because my blood work is always normal for my thyroid, but I still have symptoms of Hashimoto's, right? So that means that my thyroid's still not fully in balance, and there's other things I can do. But those are usually the signs to start to look out for, the bigger ones. Anxiety, obviously, depression. I remember the first 6 or 7 months into owning the restaurant, I was alone in it one night, and I just found myself Googling entrepreneurs and depression. And I was like, why do I feel so sad? I'm chasing my dream. And I didn't realize it was not that I was sad. I was stressed, and my body was starting to like exhibit signs of depression because of it. And that was very, very confusing. I think a lot of people don't talk about that necessarily, because they feel shame around like, oh, I just quit my job to do this thing. And everyone's like looking at me, waiting to see what I'm going to, do and how it's going to turn out. I can't give up. But it's a totally normal thing to feel, because your body is just going through a big change. Like I said, being able to handle all that stress, you have to adapt to it. It doesn't just happen overnight that you can handle tons and tons of stress. Your body, so you have to push it, just like working out and like working on your muscles.
Mm-hmm. And I guess I'll add on to that question and just ask, for somebody who's listening, our listeners are leaders, entrepreneurs, aspiring leaders, and they're like, oh, wait, that actually, yikes, sounds like me. Then what? What are the first steps? One, in a very busy life, and two, if you're not really sure what you need.
Right. I think the first thing and the easiest thing for anyone to do is, I think most people say like, oh, start meditating, but it's first like and foremost food and diet. Make sure you're eating enough. So if you're someone who's not eating breakfast, especially as a woman over 35, make sure you're getting some protein in, whatever that looks for you, even if you're vegan, like just eat enough in the morning so you actually have energy and your hormones are a bit more balanced. I didn't eat breakfast for 5 years straight, and it tanked me. It destroyed my thyroid for sure. Like that's a big part of the cause. Cutting back on sugar, like hydrating, just the basic things that we already know. Like you don't need to hire somebody to tell you this. Like you probably know what to do. But if you are someone who like struggles, like I struggle to work out a lot. Like I do some stuff, but I could always do more. Like that's where I would hire and like spend my money on. So it's like, yourself. If you suck at food, go get a nutritionist. If you suck at working out, go get a trainer. That's first. Like, fueling your body is always number one. I think a lot of the health and wellness industry try to push on you to like take things out and to remove, where if you add first, it's actually a lot easier to remove the bad stuff. If your body is hungry all the time and nutrient deficient, which is the cause of most disease too. Of course, like if you just give it what it needs, take some supplements. I am 1000% the biggest fan of magnesium. You hear a lot of people talking about it now. Magnesium glycinate specifically, 500 milligrams a day will do wonders. It's needed for over 300 processes in the body. It's the first thing to get depleted with stress. So especially if you have a lot of stress, you can take more. A nice D3 K2 combo and a good B complex is the key to anyone's success if you're just starting out. Those three things will keep you from burning out for sure.
That's really helpful. So if you had to give a little marketing pitch to someone who's like, okay, yes, I want to have my body functioning better and I want to feel better, but I still want to be a high achiever, what could you tell them about what making these changes will do for their overall performance?
Having more energy and more focus and less brain fog is always going to help an entrepreneur. But the message I try to stress to people, and this is the hardest thing to sell, is people don't realize what happens to your business if you can't work anymore and if your body does just give out. And there's honestly no telling who it can happen to, right? It happened to me. I obviously had some health issues growing up, so maybe I might have burned out a little bit faster than someone else. But your body can only take so much for so long. And I was very lucky to have my wife step in and run my restaurant while I laid in a hammock for a month and a half, being so unwell that I couldn't even get up. And I had some extra eye issues. And, when you can't work, number one, you feel like shit about yourself, right? Because we all have that thing where it's like, I'm not doing anything, I'm lazy. Mm-hmm. Like, so you feel bad, but also you're not moving your business forward. So it's like, I try to caution people. It's like, okay, yeah, you should obviously do these things, but if you don't, you only have your health, right? There's a saying that I love. It's like a healthy man has many wishes, but an unhealthy man only has one. Because if you don't have your health to do everything else that you need to do, it doesn't, like, nothing else really matters. Money doesn't matter if you don't have your health. Like, there's nothing else that you can do. And that's from personal experience of being unable to work as an entrepreneur because I got so sick.
Well, point taken. That was very well said, very well said. So one of the other areas of focus for you is about when you are a business owner and leading a team, that we should also be prioritizing the physical health of our team members. So I'm just would love to know more about why you're focusing on that and why that is important.
So being in the restaurant space and having anywhere between 10 and 20 employees at a time, the energy of, or the culture of a space really matters. And what I would notice was like, it's so easy to get burnt out in any job, especially in a restaurant. And if they were getting burnt out, I think it's really easy for a lot of leaders to just ignore it and to go old school and be like, they're having a tough day, like whatever. If you start to pick up, like, I mean, I could tell when someone's burning out from a mile away. So like, I would go up to my staff and say like, are you okay? And like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, come here. Like, no, like, what's up? Are you good? Like, everything's okay at home? Yeah, everything's fine. Are you tired? Well, yeah, of course I'm tired. Like, do you need like 2 or 3 days off in a row to like refresh? And they'd be like, and they would feel guilty. They'd be like, maybe. Yeah. I'm like, just take them, like take the days, because then they would come back and be a freaking rock star. Versus like, if you just let them keep going, most people can't advocate for themselves when it comes to their health. Or again, maybe they're people pleasers. They feel shame and guilt around
right, especially at work. Right. Yeah.
Right. So when you do that work for yourself and on yourself, you tend to notice it in other people. When you become more self-aware, you can be self-aware for others. And not that it's your job necessarily to like baby everybody and to hold their hand, but I think as a leader, you have 2 options, right? You can just get to know your people and what they need and help them, and hopefully they don't take it for granted. But I would rather be the leader who, gets them over a hump and maybe gets a little taken for granted once in a blue moon than have my staff be burnt out and hate working for me.
Right. Right. And I really like the way that you phrase that when your example of how you would ask them, are they doing okay? And do they need a little time? Because I do think as an employer, you have to also walk that line of like not asking about their health information and all of that so carefully. And so I think that as the boss, you tend to just like not go there with your team because you don't want that to seem like you're prying into their personal information. So I really like the way you phrase it, because you kind of just open the door for them to just say what they need and not necessarily share what's going on for them.
Yeah. I mean, there have been times I've just offered like, hey, like, I know we've been really, really busy here. If you need a couple of days, like if you're not sleeping well or something, you got to catch up, like totally fine. Just let me know. We'll work it into the schedule. And then I let them just decide. And if they don't do it, then they don't do it. But at least they know that it's an option.
Right. Yeah, no, I love that. That it is really true. I mean, it's funny because like that's brave too, to offer your staff some time off, especially, as you were mentioning, like you were running this restaurant during the pandemic. And so I'm sure that like there were times when you really couldn't spare people just like staffing wise. And so if you're opening the door for like, take time when you need that, it's there is like that probably inner discussion of as the boss, like, okay, yeah, but like, I actually need you to work, but I appreciate that it is really valuable and important to nurture that in them.
Well, yeah, it was, I mean, when everyone knew that was the culture, it was a lot easier because they knew if they needed something, then everyone else would have their back too. So it's just like, hey, John, like Susie really needs off. I should not feel well. Are you okay? You're good. Can you do an extra day? Yeah, no problem. I got it. Most people are happy to reciprocate and to give, especially if they know they have a little something in the bank for later.
Totally. Yeah, no, totally. One of my work programs is a creative arts after school enrichment program, and we're in a bunch of different schools. And that is the mentality with the staff too, is like, hey, will someone sub for me? I have a whatever, whether it's a social thing or they have an exam. I have a lot of college students that work for me, and or they're just not, they're well enough to work, but they're not feeling great. And there is sort of that like karma relationship where it's like, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine, that kind of thing. So for someone who is wanting to learn more about this, like you were mentioning the different supplements, do you have any favorite resources that we could link in show notes or places that people should go to start? You listed off some suggestions, but where could someone go to learn more about this?
So I'm actually going to be uploading something like this into my school community. I don't know if you've ever used School, but it's really great. It's better than a certain free group that everybody uses.
Okay.
But it's School, SKOOL.
Oh.
And you just go to school.com/Amanda Vargas. So I do like weekly calls, and then I'm going to be building courses into there, but I'm also going to like upload PDFs. So I'm going to have something up there very shortly. That's just like a basic like supplements for entrepreneurs things, and with some, recommended dosages, of course, check with your doctor. But most of these supplements are very safe and basic things to take every day, and along with the brands that I use, because obviously you want to make sure you're getting some decent quality stuff. I don't recommend buying most things on Amazon because it's just copycat companies. If it's direct from a company, then that's fine. Like Thorne, for example, is a really great company. Pure Encapsulations, that's like a nice like lower price one. But yeah, I'll have a bunch of resources in my free school community. So you guys don't have to pay. It's free.
That's really great. So we'll definitely link that. And so what is the school? What is it called?
The group is called Mend with Amanda. This one is specifically for entrepreneurs with some sort of like chronic health condition. But I have a lot of people in the group that are they either just have a health condition and they're not entrepreneurs, or some are just entrepreneurs who are looking for some health tips. So kind of a little bit of everything, but that's the main focus and the main people that I get.
We'll definitely link that in the show notes. All right. So you told us a little bit about your childhood, but I'm also wondering about the leadership aspect. Do you have any examples from when you were growing up where you gravitated towards leadership roles, or is this more of an adult thing for you?
So when I was a kid, I went to a camp for visually impaired kids, visually impaired and blind. So visually impaired is anything that is considered like disabled, usually 2200 vision or like a really small field of vision. So I probably had some of the most vision there out of all the kids. And this is a camp that had like 200 kids a summer.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, being 11, 12, 14 years old, and it's me, and I'm pretty capable. And like next to me is a kid who's like using a cane and completely blind, or sometimes they have multiple disabilities. Sometimes they had autism, or there was even some deafblind kids. You kind of really step up very quickly because you're like, wow, I know I have this problem too, but I am so much more capable. Like, how do I not help somebody else? So I went there until I was 16. I worked there. I worked my way up to assistant director my last year, and I was supposed to be a director, but they ended up switching the program. So, I mean, I was always trying to help everybody, just kind of, just lead them in any way that I could. And entrepreneurially, I was always selling something. I was like in the coat closet with like erasers and candy and selling them for like 5-10 cents, like whatever. I always loved making money. My aunt had a hair salon. I was always like sweeping hair there. So it's always felt really natural, but it doesn't mean I haven't had doubt. I think like towards the end of the restaurant, I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm not a number one. Like maybe I'm a 2 or a 3. Gary Vee always talks about this. He's like, maybe you'd be like an awesome 7. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I would be an awesome 7. So I tried that, and it did not last very long for me, because a month in, I'm like, I
can't do
there's
this.
all these things I want to do for this company. I got a job for the first time. And I was like, and it was something that I thought would be like a really good fit for me. I thought I would have a lot of flexibility and autonomy, and I did, but I didn't have the power to make the decisions to do the things that I really knew would move it forward. So I hung in there as long as I could, but I'm a number one. I think I'll just always be a number one.
Yeah. Well, I think you're in very good company with our listeners here, because this is a community of people that were selling erasers in the closet and directing camps and all of that. So that's great. What is a leadership lesson that you have learned the hard way along your journey?
Let's see. A hard leadership lesson. Probably firing my best employee in the restaurant. I probably should have handled a situation a little bit better. I lost my cool. And again, me losing my cool is like a little bit of yelling, and like it wasn't really, to me, it wasn't really that crazy. After like 8 months of something happening, and I just lost it. And like I had like a really stern conversation with one of my staff members, and he ended up calling me that night to try to talk about it. I was still angry, so I didn't pick up the phone. I was like, no, I'm going to wait. He called again, so I thought something was wrong at the restaurant, so I picked up. He said he wanted to talk. I was like, you know what? I want to, yes, but like not right now. And he kept pushing me. So of course, the conversation was a little heated between the both of us. I found out that he had my entire staff on the background, in the background of the phone call. So everyone heard me yelling. And there was like some, personal financial things said. He was the manager, so only for his ears. And I found out like a week later from my mom, because my mom knew the kid. So it was just like this whole messy situation, family with business. I'm like, how could you not tell me? And he told you this. And I ended up letting him go because I was like, the entire staff turned on me. I don't know if I would do it the same way again. I think looking back, I would get everybody in a room and just have an open, honest conversation, which is a really, really hard thing to do when you feel that threatened as a leader. But it was a lesson in like, wow, I messed up somehow. Like I messed up, and if I didn't handle this the way that I handled it, it would have turned out very differently. He was somebody who was clearly very frustrated and upset. And if I was a little bit more self-aware at that time, and also this is because I was burnt out. This was the peak of me being burnt out. So I was so not self-aware of how I felt that there was no way I could be there for my staff the way that I needed to be. So I would say that was the one that kicked me in the butt the most.
We all have those moments that course correct us for the next chapter. Let's just say that. All right. I have some final wrap-up questions to ask you that are a little bit more rapid fire. Does anyone come to mind that you could shout out who believed in your ability to lead, maybe even before you did? I know yours started really early, but is there anybody that you could give props to on that front?
Yes, I think the person, when I had I'm the number 2, 3, 4 thought in my mind, my friend Liz, she said, no, you're number 1. Don't forget it. And so it was a nice reminder. But Yeah, my friend Tara, she owned a similar type of restaurant to me, the health food store, and she would always just say, keep going, just like push through it, push through it. And I think without those constant reminders over the years, I probably would have given up once or twice for sure.
I love it. Is there personally one tool or strategy that you use for staying organized and effective in your work, whether that's like a tech thing or paper or anything like that?
I've blown through most of them probably. They don't work. I have horrific ADHD. So I honestly have found just like an old school, like making a list and doing the biggest things early in the day. Like classic, like, because if you can move those big things, move the needle, just like everybody does. I'm going to attempt using something called Motion this weekend, an AI organizer. But yeah, I mean, anything comes up. I always tell everyone, just try different things. They all have free trials. Find the one that clicks with you the most, because everyone's brain is different. So got to keep finding stuff. Yeah. The busier you get, the harder it gets.
I like how you said that you burn through them, because that is like exactly what it is. Like you try it and go. About a year ago, I started using Notion. I know Notion and Motion are very close. And Notion is the first thing that has worked for my brain, but it's like other ones, not at all. So yeah, I totally get that. All right. Is there a favorite leadership book, podcast, or resource that you love?
Right. I mean, right now, I think with a lot of people, I'm like super into Alex Ramosi. I just love how philosophical he is and the way he thinks about things. I was actually a philosophy major. So the way he frames things, I find really interesting. And he's bringing a lot of the self-awareness to the entrepreneur community, because I think it's definitely been romanticized over the last 5 to 10 years. And he's just really he's telling people like how it is and how hard it is. And like just to be ready for it. And I think a lot of people don't do that. They just want to sell you their way of starting a business and do what I did and you'll be fine. And it's like, you're setting people up for failure left and right. Like this guy, he does the complete opposite, which I really appreciate for people. And yeah, so that's who I'm going to give a shout out to right now.
Awesome. All right. My last question is, if you had a day off, like totally off, and you had to take a day off, like you could accomplish no to-dos, no work, no nothing, you couldn't start any projects, nothing like that, what is one activity that you would go and one place that you would have something to eat?
My wife and I love Miami. We're actually going in a few weeks. We're beach people. We just sit on the beach and fry all day long. And they have this really great restaurant there called Bilbo's. Being gluten-free and dairy-free, there's how many places I could eat. So that is, it's always a challenge. I have an app, that basically tells me where I can eat, because unfortunately there's no restaurants like the one that I had. That's True. What I would do. Just relax on Miami Beach and get some sun and have a good time.
Awesome. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for joining me today. I know that our listeners are going to want to learn more. So where can people reach out to you? Where can they find you and learn more about all the things that you're doing?
Sure. The best way to follow me is on Instagram at Fettle Founder, Fettle Founder. And then the school community is school.com/Amanda Vargas, I believe. But if you just type in Amanda Vargas into school or Mend with Amanda, I will pop up. It's a really easy app to download. And again, it's free. I'm sure I'll charge down the road for it at some point, but right now it's free. So everyone should just come join.
Awesome. Well, we will link everything in the show notes. Thank you for joining me. I really enjoyed our conversation. And to all the listeners, thank you for being here. And we'll be back next time with another inspiring leadership interview. Follow the Leaders is produced by Lit Path Studios, and music is by Shane Ivers. You can hear more about this show and all the other podcasts at Lit Path Studios by going to www.litpathstudios.com.